Welcome to the Startups and AI podcast. Today I'm joined by Cosmo Spence, who's the founder of Cloud9, and he's a serial entrepreneur. Cosmo, would love to learn a bit more about your journey so far and what you guys are building at Cloud9.
Hi, Gaurav. Thanks for having me. My journey started in 2007 as an entrepreneur. At that time, working in the film, TV, entertainment industry. My first business was a video game esports TV channel, which we launched in 2007. That was after spending probably about 10 years working directly in the film, TV industry. And I left a film distribution business at the time of a merger and then was looking at new opportunities in 2007 and saw an opportunity where the video game industry was merging with Hollywood, merging with TV, with content, with music. And we saw an opportunity there very similar to some of the investors who came on board at that time who were also early investors in MTV. And what was interesting is we had a similar journey in the sense that when they launched MTV, everybody was saying, well, why people don't watch music, they listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we had the same idea with video games, is that it's, people don't watch video games, they just play them, which actually incorrect. It's about community, engagement, content. In effect, launched that with a really good team, another founder who also launched a very early kind of TV channel in that space. The lessons learned from that is I would say, listened to your instincts, made some decisions, which I kind of felt were probably thinking that they are kind of advisors and board kind of knew better. Whereas ironically, we were in a space that was quite new in the content space. We were trying to approach things differently. And so using old models, in effect, was very much the advice that we were going, push the linear TV versus the more digital short-term, short-form content. And looking back, I would definitely have kind of just don't listen to those instincts, as in, there were some things that we could have done in-house that we did externally. And, I didn't feel that I had the experience to listen to those instincts and listen to everyone else. Whereas actually, when you look back on it, we probably wasted a lot of money. And also it taught me three really essential ingredients, which is sort of common sense, but it's something that's really important for entrepreneurs is the three ingredients are find the right team or partners, the right products, of course, and the right money. And the latter is also very important. Don't just take any money. Find strategic investors who actually want to support, understand your vision, but at the same time, bring some experience as well, scars to that. So I think that was a good experience. That we were a little bit early to market as well, because in effect, I left that business after 3 years and then moved to the States for a few years working for another media technology company in New York, which again was equally interesting. And seeing the pain points of development teams in different countries, how you manage those. And again, pushing growth, trying to educate people that this is something new, this is an opportunity versus no, that we've always done it this way and this is the way it should be done. And after 3 years in that sort of industry out in America, I came back and then started doing some advisory work for a number of startups, having got into Level 39, which is like a very early kind of tech startup hub in the UK in Canary Wharf. And that was eye-opening because there was so many startups in that space. And we launched another company in that space, which I was a co-founder of, called Mind or Flow City as it's trading as, which is a digital out-of-home space. And again, that's now running, doing exceptionally well, but a really amazing team who are operating and executing it, fellow co-founders. But I left that and then went on to launch as in do consulting work in fintech for Fintech Circle, which is how I got into fintech originally. But I found that a fascinating space because as the film TV industry changed itself dramatically in how you consume it, how you pay for it, the same thing was happening with fintech, payments, technology, money. So I saw a kind of parallel in that space, no great plan. And eventually Cloud9 was an opportunity through a pain point where a couple of my co-founders had some experience in working for a number of other startups in the B2B banking space. They wanted to do something differently. Their investment and board team wouldn't allow them. And they said, well, why don't we have a go? Why don't we help build something differently? And we were going to build a banking as a service app. And we wanted to build find a processor to work with that could do this. We couldn't find one. This is using latest technology. This is 2020-ish. And so we decided to build our own. So we moved from being a B2B banking app to an Istio processor. That's how I got into Cloud9. And very much luckily, my co-founder, Suresh Bajani, who actually has experience in that space, and that's something I didn't have experience in, was essential. But also he had the open-mindedness to look at something where, we could do this better. We could build another platform that is better
Hmm.
using the latest technology. So Cloud9 was born very much out of that. And the name very much driven by, Suresh and the other co-founders it's the old English spelling of cloud,
Hmm.
but it's also using the latest technology. So we like to think of ourselves as, the latest technology, but also old business values. That's so Cloud9's
Yeah.
been operating since 2021.
That's an amazing journey. And you talked about a lot of lessons here. One, from what I can remember, is about instincts when, there's a new industry coming up. Similar to what we could see right now with AI, it's like early days of AI. You also have to rely a lot on your instincts these days. So, from that perspective, do you have any sort of sense on where the industry is heading with AI and how do you use your instincts and experience?
I think the instincts primarily are, even if they may be wrong or they may be right, what it should do is ask the question of why. So
Hmm.
you've been told that this is the way it's always been done and it's the best way to do it. It's like, well, why is it the best way? And it's keep
Hmm.
pushing, keep challenging to find, is there a better way? And that's why it's great building teams who have that, say, curiosity, say, can this be done better? There's a
Hmm.
pain point here, for example, in the issue of processing space Cloud9 is operating in. One of the biggest nightmares traditionally in the industry is migrating from one issue processor to another. For example, if a bank wants to move, and that's a nightmare,
Hmm.
predominantly because of the technology. Now, with the new technologies, it's way smoother.
Hmm.
It's obviously there's obstacles there, but it's a
Hmm.
lot better. And so again, it's just having teams who are prepared to, it's not necessarily taking a risk, but an informed risk in the sense of, hang on, we can do this better with this technology. Let's build a platform 100% cloud native.
Hmm.
And again, that was lucky at the time the technology was there. But yeah, so there's instincts, I think, is very much, it's that alert signal of, hang on, is there a better way of doing this? And that's the
Hmm.
question you should be asking the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also, there's like from the moment you come across a problem, you start asking why to finding product market fit. It's a very big journey, and there are a lot of challenges in between there. So, what would you advise, having gone through that, initial ideation, problem statement, sort of asking the why to finding product market fit? Like, what are the lessons you've learned there, and what would
Well,
you
it's
recommend new founders?
Yeah, it's definitely, well, the product, the essential bit is what is, I mean, or most of the problems or the products that we built, whether it's a TV channel in this space where there's an opportunity to serve content in a better way, or with Cloud9, it's doing things, certain aspects in a better way. And I think the key bit is back to the people. You need to surround yourself with, whether it's a founding team who can bring, or a board, could be non-executives, could be advisors, who bring different skills to the
Hmm.
table and
Hmm.
believe in the product you're building. And generally, if the product is serving a pain point that is not being identified or resolved,
Hmm.
then, generally people get on board with that and then offer their opportunities. As in, you may have someone on the board who's a regulatory expert who can provide that kind of
Hmm.
level of compliance. You may have someone else has a more financial operational background who can bring that experience. And that's
Hmm.
very much key, is finding people who've also not just had amazing successes, but also, like, you always hear the cliche, but it's a true one, of the entrepreneurs who've had maybe, a couple of really big successes, but you don't hear about the 8 failures behind that.
Hmm.
That's really important.
Yeah, and it's a great segue in a way. Like, have you had failures? You've had a lot of successes. Like, have you had any failures in terms of ideas you came up with? And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah, and timings with market as well. I mean, like, literally, I mean, our TV channel, I would say, Jinx TV, was too early to market, actually.
hmm.
But it went on. I mean, it sadly went into administration last year. I mean, I left the business in 2010, but it's the same thing with another business. I had two others which was in the Internet of Things space. One of them addressing a problem that was, I had my bike stolen so many times in different cities, whether it was New York, whether it
Hmm.
was UK, in London, and COVID came along. And I pretty much smashed two of those businesses. And at the moment, they're still there. They're very dormant. But yeah, it's timing to market, but it's also learning about finding the right period, which is why I think now this is the kind of the ingredients for entrepreneurs to build products, find the right teams, is couldn't be a better time right now with the AI tools out there to help you,
Yeah.
put your pieces together. But really, it's down to also surrounding yourself with people who can help guide you in using those tools, because to set up a business now compared to, let's say, 10 years ago is way
Yeah,
simpler.
yeah, absolutely. And you've talked a lot about like surrounding yourself with the right people, finding the right team, right skill sets. how does one find that? Like, obviously, you could be working with people in a company and you can find them, or you've had like friends you grew up with. Like, what are some things that you look for, and how have you found those people? Because it's also a challenge if you find like a mismatch in terms of a co-founder. That's also one
Yeah.
of the biggest reasons of failure for startups. So, how do you go about that?
And again, I made all those mistakes. And I think it's, at a certain point where it's understanding, it's finding the people who are also prepared to kind of hold their hand up and take accountability. Where do you find those people? I think through networks, through conversations online, where, there's a sort of, you pick up a kind of synergy in what they are promoting, what they're promoting or discussing, I think is more important. And I was very lucky getting into this in the first place. Was Level 39 was a brilliant hub. I've now done a number of accelerators with Cloud9. One of those was Tech Nation. And again, there's a founders group that's kind of through that, which is a great resource because these are people who are doing it, done it, and doing more. And everyone's helping each other. It's that spirit. So I think that's really good. But also, I think it's finding those people that resonate with you that complement you. And straight away, you walk into a room and you're having a conversation with someone, like you want to, ask them more questions, or you want to kind of find out
Hmm.
more. And if that chemistry is there, then you can build on that. And that could be touched on through online communities, and then you can
Hmm.
ideally meet if you can. But I think
Hmm.
it does start with the people. Sure, the idea is there, but you also need those people to kind of support you, guide you through it as well.
Awesome. And I'm also curious around, you hear a lot of buzz about how AI is going to change everything in terms of, work. It's going to be automated. A lot of jobs are going to be disrupted. In terms of your experience, how much of that change are you seeing in day-to-day work? Like, how much of your work have you started using AI? And what are some of the challenges you're seeing with AI in your work?
I would say, I think obviously there's the scare about the jobs. I think it's a correction as well, in the sense of, I think traditionally there have been many jobs, let's say that the 80% can do, that have been overcharged, overpaid, and a lot of those jobs will be replaced. But it will not change. What I would say is it will shine a light, I believe, on the talent, whether
Mhm.
you're a really talented accountant, a talented lawyer, a talented designer, a talented editor. I think that has always remained the same. And all it will do is will highlight quicker the real talent in that, what I call is the final 20%. I think
Mhm.
AI could get you to that 80% much quicker, but it's that final 20% where you need that talent, whether it's the genius, creativity, thinking slightly out of the box, which is where I think that final bit will differentiate. So for example, whether it's editing, a movie, or whether it's, the tools will get you to that predominant foundation quicker, but it's that real talent at the end. So you could use AI to research a legal report, but when you're at that final bit, you want someone to sit on top and look at it in a way
Mhm.
that AI does not do, which is completely thinking, kind of touching on experience. I'm sure, I know it's getting better, but I think that human
Mhm.
interaction bit at the final 20% is essential. And it's the same
Mhm.
thing. There's a lot of content out there that is literally just relying on AI to do it all. And
Mhm.
I don't know whether you call it the AI schlop or whatever, but you could spot it. But you could then spot the ones where you've got the real creative minds, the real legal geniuses who are using it to kind of really focus on what I'd say is the good stuff, that final 20%, which is what that skill set can find. And I think that's the exciting bit, is being able to get to that final delivery and using AI, guiding it. And you need people to guide it at the end, get the right
Mhm.
prompts, all of those areas.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think like a lot of people say taste is what's going to matter a lot, because if you give similar prompts, you're going to get like similar sort of results, and you could actually spot it that this is not written by an actual human, and that leads to losing trust for sure. Yeah, I think that human creativity, I think, is still going to play a part. And yeah, I think that's going to be a differentiator. If everyone can write code within a week, then it's, that human aspect is going to be the differentiator.
Yes, they could write the code in a week, but what is important is what you're doing with that. And it's the same thing. I remember in the film TV industry, yeah, there was periods where everyone was going, "Oh, TV's dead,"
Mhm.
and actually never. Content was always king, and
Mhm.
how you create that content, is the key bit. So how you stream it, pay for it, consume it, that's
Mhm.
all changed. But the content, and you could spot the really good writers, the really good
Mhm.
directors, and I
Mhm.
think it's the same thing with any industry now. You're kind of it's authenticity, and I think I have a couple of teenagers teenagers,
Hmm.
kids who were no longer kids, and they are very much focused on. I think there's a real drive for something that is made by hand, that
Hmm.
is physical, not digital. But doesn't mean to say you can't use those digital tools to get there quicker. But I agree. I think there's a real drive, and I think focus on the authentic voice, the authentic product.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a 4-year-old, and usually what I've been doing with him is like he asks me, I want to see a video where I'm wearing a mask and I'm doing like very specific prompt that he wants to see, and I'll just create a video on using Google View and show it to him, and like he gets excited. So I think there's this aspect of being able to do anything, like create content specific to people. So that aspect obviously has become pretty easy, but then like executing it, like create, for example, creating an entire movie that doesn't look like AI slop and looks like actual quality, like that definitely requires humans to do the effort.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's also it's about storytelling engagement, and humans really want that. And I
Hmm.
think we always read stories to our kids, to a reasonably good age, and I think
Hmm.
that's really important. And also, they've done studies where if you're trying to read a kid in bed or whatever a story through an iPad, it's way less engaging
Hmm.
because there's something about the kind of sucking
Yeah.
something about a book and the written word as well. It's really
Yeah,
important.
I think it's, yeah, I read a study where I think like if there's less cognitive load, then your mind doesn't develop as much. So basically, you need to be challenged. And if you're reading through a book, I think you need to use your own imagination. There's like a lot of cognitive load that you need to do versus just watching everything is done for you versus you need to, put some effort. And the more effort you put, I think improves you.
Yeah, totally. It's creative thinking, critical thinking as well, which is so important in education. And that's why I was going back to the why. It's like don't just
Yeah.
accept something. What ask the question.
Hmm.
So I think it's really important.
I'd love to learn about how do you execute. Like one is understanding the problem and validating the idea, like, with people. But how do you make sure you excel in executing? Because two people or multiple people would have the same idea, but not all startups succeed. What do you think
Well,
is needed for execution?
if you're solving a problem, that's the first good start. But then it's surrounding yourself with it. Well, obviously, then you have the vision of what that problem is and how to tell that
Hmm.
story, the narrative, as opposed to just constant selling, selling, selling. You want to be
Hmm.
able to push kind of, the team as well. And I think what I like about one of, as a good example of the importance of the human intervention in this, as having the team around you, the right team who know their different areas really well. So Cloud9 were very lucky with the team that's been built by Suresh, who's kind of, been in the industry a very long time, but is an amazing COO, amazing chief product officer, the CTO too. The underlying thing I think that unites them all is this vision that has been
Hmm.
created by, from the beginning of predominantly building something that is the best of what it can do, but also just doing it better than everything has been done before. But also, I think what's really important is the kind of the narrative, how you tell that story and push it out there. And with Cloud9, we've only just started telling that story as well, which is the main focus the last kind of few years since it's been live with the first client out in Asia, in Singapore, has been just delivering, making sure that the product is doing what we say it's going to do and is delivering to the clients. And that's now growing, scaling up now. But so now the fun bit is having those real live case studies so we can tell a story with authenticity that, we've done it,
Hmm.
as opposed to going out the gate straight away. Because we built in stealth for 2 years. No one really knew who we were. We were popping out the odd little thing that Cloud9 around, but it's like, what is Suresh doing? And so that was very much a really key bit, is not trying to build something with hot air, if that makes sense. You're kind of selling it before it's even out there and actually doing stuff. So we're now building up a really good bunch of case studies, which will then roll out in the next 12 months of real live case studies that can then be dissected, interviewed with the customers, the clients, and then relay that to our customer base and
Hmm.
prospects that this is working. It's helping. It's solving the problem, as opposed to trying to sell something that's not quite live. I think that's the
Hmm.
important bit.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think, like, especially like you said, there are times when you're trying to build something that doesn't exist. So that's where storytelling becomes really important, and you need to get the buy-in from the customers. What's your process like more practically in engaging early on? and like storytelling, and how long does it take usually? Like, do you have any things that new entrepreneurs can learn from on how to close early deals?
Well, it's, where we were sitting is obviously the team were highly experienced, which
Hmm.
built a level of trust. But there was still a kind of question mark amongst a number of prospects about, well, hang on, how can we trust you as a company? Are you well invested? All of these areas. And which is now we've moved out of startup into scale up now, which is great. But one of the tools that we put together at the beginning as founders, it's like even when you're doing movies, when you kind of launch a movie from the script through to kind of distribution, there's a kind of spirit around that movie, a vision that you
Hmm.
want to protect from the very beginning. So when you read the first script, it's like, wow, this is amazing. And there's so many things along the way that can just chip away at it to the point where you end up with something that's completely different from the beginning. That's where
Yeah.
the vision is really important, and you need to protect that with the team. But how do you, as a founding, and that's the culture. So you want to create that culture, which is really important to and protect it. And I found one of the tools that we did very early on in the business, which in May 2023, after 14 months intensive processing and verification, we became B Corp certified, which is it's like a kite mark for businesses that are focusing on environmental, social and governance kind of areas, which, as in when I say environment, that there's a kind of focus on doing something, some sort of social impact that is
Hmm.
positive, as opposed and being totally transparent. So if you've got that what I say is level of protection, where businesses can then basically go, oh, you're B Corp certified. It's already an area the way it shows that we're totally transparent about what we do, who our investors are, who our suppliers are, how we're operating. That's really important. And I think it's in this kind of day and age of trying to push authenticity, you need total transparency in that area too. And that's really important. And actually, some of our recent clients with Cloud9 have been looking at that as a strong ethical grounding for the business as well. But I think it's also a really good tool to protect the culture, because
Hmm.
you're hammered from all areas. You may have some members of the team who may not be kind of contributing positively within that. How do you deal with it? Same thing with the board level. There may
Hmm.
be co-founders, there may be directors or advisors who are contributing on a negative level to the vision. And that's
Hmm.
really important. You need tools to somehow protect that. And I think, like you said, I mean, there's other businesses where, you see founders split up and then you can have a VC that comes in and divides.
Hmm.
I've been through that, which creates a level of an environment that is quite toxic. That
Hmm.
you've got to try and protect the business. And it's hard, don't get me wrong, as you expand. So we've been very careful in that with Cloud9 to sort of put at least a process in place, which we believe with B Corp provides a level of protection in that area where,
Hmm.
we have to be totally open and transparent. And I think it breeds an element of trust and confidence as well to our
Hmm.
prospects.
Awesome. That's amazing to hear. Yeah, I haven't heard a lot about B Corp certification, so it's like an amazing thing
Well, we're
to
one of
hear.
the first fintechs to become. I mean, there are
Nice.
banks like, I don't know if you heard of Coots Bank in the UK.
Hmm.
It's a very traditional, very old bank,
Hmm.
but they became B Corp certified, which I think is, on their level. There's been some negative reports within the industry. People say they're just using it as many other companies. I'm not
Hmm.
singling out Coots, but some bad press around companies just using it as a kind of tick box. But actually, in our experience, generally the other B Corps that we come across, there's a genuine belief within the business that they want to protect the culture, provide a real
Hmm.
positivity throughout the business. And I think stop, what I believe is the brilliant phrase. I don't know if it's somewhere, maybe it could have come out of Germany, but there's a wonderful phrase, which is a fish rots from the head down. And I think, you've got to stop that. If the vision from the top of the business and the team at the top are kind of, let's say, running on a kind of slightly negative vision, that just
Hmm.
filters through to the business. So if you could try and protect that vision and ensure
Hmm.
that everyone who's coming on board buys into that vision, I think
Hmm.
is puts you in a good place. But don't get me wrong. I mean, there's market things can still, and the other area, sorry, just to kind of tap into, where the business gets stronger is when it's sometimes on its knees at the beginning, when things are really tough
Hmm.
and cash flow could be exceptionally tight, and you're looking at the kind of, the very beginning. That's when you find out who your real team players are within the business too.
Yeah.
People show their true color, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think like sometimes having constraints makes you more resourceful and like forces you to come up with new ideas. And then like that's where I guess some people really shine.
Well, it's also not necessarily anyone's particular fault. I mean, there's some people, if you're a startup, you don't want to hire people who are predominantly trained in a corporate mindset. You need,
Yeah.
and also there's different stages. So I'm probably better suited for startup to scale up. But then you need those people from scale up above who understand the operational side of it on corporate element regulation.
Absolutely.
But at the very beginning, sometimes having those sorts of people at the beginning, it doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think like early on, there's a lot more challenges when like the ship isn't steady. And once the ship is steady, like you need to have a lot more processes because only then you can have 10,000, let's say, company of people when you build processes. But early on, when you're a startup, you need to be lean and you need to be, I guess, a lot more open to new ideas, trying out new things because you're trying to build something that doesn't exist, right? So,
Yeah, and ignore the title in a funny way. I mean, because sometimes you're doing different jobs, which is,
yeah.
hang on, I'm not being paid to do this, but that only works if the vision from the top and everyone's kind of coherent is clear. Well, when I say the
Mhm.
top is, we're still quite a flat business in the sense of, there's, Suresh is incredibly approachable as a COO, all the sort of C-suite execs in there, all approachable. And again, it's the same level with each of their teams as we grow. Everyone needs to kind of feel part of the business and the hiring process. But yeah, I think it's really important just to kind of have that level of openness to know that this is what you're getting into. And also it's our responsibility as startup founders to relay that to the staff because there's nothing
Mhm.
worse than hiring somebody and then they're going, well, hang on, why am I doing this?
Yeah. How do you do that? How do you like, do you have a process on how you communicate your vision
Well, you've got to do
regularly?
it on. Yeah, we've got to kind of, I think, be open from the beginning that there may be some other areas of roles that need fulfilling, and plus
Mhm.
you need to document it too. The contracts, employment agreements, etc., need to cover that too. Which is
Mhm.
why the B Corp process is very good because it really shines a light on. Sure, if you want to be an environmental kind of focused business that provides a level of kind of and also social positivity, but without the right governance, it's not going to work. So you've got to be
Mhm.
really sure from the very beginning that all these kind of areas of, let's say, compliance, etc., are correct as well. So that's also, I think, helps having
Mhm.
with Cloud9. I brought on very early onto the board a friend who I've known for a very long time. He has both corporate and startup experience, which is great. If you can find those people, they're really
Mhm.
helpful. And he's now our current head of risk and compliance at Cloud9. He is involved in other businesses, but he's been really kind of key in helping us through all these different processes. Otherwise, you end up 2 years down the line with a situation where it comes and bites you.
Yeah, yeah. One final question I have is like, what are your current biggest challenges? And what, I guess, two questions. One is like, what are now your current biggest challenges that you've found your product market fit, you're scaling? And then secondly, what advice do you have in general for new founders, like your top lessons?
I think there's complete and utter transparency from the very beginning where work is being executed, that you're not putting all the responsibility on someone's shoulders, assuming that they're going to get the job done because they may be having certain issues and then they kind of get slightly out of their kind of depth. And then, so the communication is really important. So opening up Slack channels between kind of departments that anything is kind of, hang on, this isn't quite right, as opposed
Mhm.
to creating these silos where things can probably kind of, their problem may just be very small at the beginning and then over a few months, possibly a year, you'd end up, but hang on, why didn't we know about this? So I think it's open communication from the very beginning is really important. That level of just literally anyone within the business can highlight, hang on, I'm not so sure this is kind of correct or whatever, and identify problems at the very beginning. And that pulls the team closer together as well.
And any like final thoughts for new founders? Any other things that, over the course that we haven't covered so far that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think my own preference is don't do it alone. As a co-founder, as a founder, I think yes, you can do it and you can tap into a community. But if you can have a co-founder who complements you,
Mhm.
they may be more financially focused versus kind of or
Mhm.
technically kind of more. That's great to have that complementary kind of pair, and then you kind of literally have each other's backs as you go forward. And I think that's really important. And that's I think you need that. It can be very lonely if you do it by yourself.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Cosmo. This was pretty eye-opening, and thank you for sharing a lot of lessons from your journey. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of new founders. And all the best with Cloud9, and hopefully, you're going to hear a lot more about your company's growth in the near future.
Thank you,
But thank you
Gaurav.
so
And
much for your time.
yeah, I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Yeah.